The white envelope sat untouched on my kitchen counter, its gold embossed logo of Maxwell Fashion Group catching the morning light. I'd been avoiding it for 3 days, but today's urgent text from my cousin, Michael, forced me to acknowledge its existence. My name is Sarah, and that envelope represented everything I'd been trying to escape from in the sustainable fashion world. I picked it up, feeling the weight of the expensive paper between my fingers as my phone buzzed again. "Just open it already," Emma called from my living room, where she'd been pretending to work on her laptop for the past hour. "Your phone's been going crazy, and I can feel your anxiety from here." I tore open the envelope, pulling out a heavyweight card that probably cost more than a month's worth of eco-friendly fabric. "You are cordially invited," I read aloud, my voice dripping with sarcasm, "to celebrate Maxwell Fashion Group's 50th anniversary gala and the unveiling of our new global expansion initiative. Your mother never does anything small, does she?" Emma closed her laptop and joined me in the kitchen, her IT consultant's analytical eyes scanning the invitation. "Wait, there's a handwritten note." I pulled out a smaller card, immediately recognizing my mother's precise handwriting. "Your presence is required. It's time you understood our legacy." Well, that's not ominous at all. My phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. "Michael, I was just about to call you. Did you get one too? Sarah, you need to be there. Trust me on this." I switched to speakerphone so Emma could hear. His lawyer's tone was more serious than usual. "Why?" "So Mother can publicly shame me again about my little sustainable fashion project. Last time I showed up at one of her events, she spent 20 minutes telling her board members how disappointed she was that her only daughter chose to waste her talent on eco-friendly textiles instead of joining Maxwell's design team. It's different this time," Michael insisted. "Davidson called me yesterday. Something big is happening." Emma raised an eyebrow. "The company lawyer? Now that's interesting." I walked to my design studio window, looking out at the city below. My latest sustainable textile patterns sat on the drafting table, a direct challenge to everything my mother's fast fashion empire stood for. At the design studio, "What did Davidson say exactly?" I asked, tracing my fingers over the organic cotton samples on my desk. "He wouldn't give details, but he mentioned your grandmother Catherine's letter. You know, the one she left you before she died." My heart skipped a beat. I crossed the room to my filing cabinet, pulling open the bottom drawer where I kept Grandma Catherine's letter. I'd read it so many times the recycled paper was starting to wear at the creases. "Sarah," Emma's voice was gentle. "What letter?" "My grandmother left me a letter 6 months ago, right before she died," it said. I paused, unfolding the paper. It said that when the time came, I would need to be brave, that she'd left me something that would expose the truth about Maxwell's practices. But I had to wait for the right moment. "And you never mentioned this because—" Emma crossed her arms, her consultant's instincts kicking in. "Because it felt private. Special." I traced my grandmother's signature with my finger. She was the only one who ever really understood me, who supported my vision of sustainable fashion, my choice to work at a small design firm instead of joining the family business. She was everything my mother wasn't. Michael's voice crackled through the speaker. "The gala is in 3 days. Mother's going all out. Hired the Grand Plaza Ballroom. Invited every major fashion industry contact and environmental certification board member. Emma grabbed her laptop again, typing furiously. Just hacked into the event planner's database. Over 300 confirmed guests, including every major fashion magazine editor and sustainable fashion critic. Perfect, I muttered. A huge audience for whatever corporate greenwashing campaign she's planning. Or, Emma looked up, a mischievous glint in her eye. The perfect opportunity to finally expose the truth about Maxwell's overseas manufacturing practices. Your grandmother must have had a reason for leaving you that letter. Maybe this is the moment she was talking about. I read the invitation again, my mother's note sending a chill down my spine. Understand our legacy. After years of trying to force me into her fast fashion empire, the right schools, the right internships, the right corporate mindset, was this her final power play? I'll be there, I told Michael. But I'm doing this my way. Back at the studio. After hanging up, I walked back to my drafting table. It held my latest project, a textile design incorporating my grandmother's sustainable manufacturing principles. On the wall hung a portrait of her, her kind eyes watching over my work, wearing the antique brass compass pendant she never took off, the same one she'd left me in her will, along with a letter. Emma came to stand beside me. What are you thinking? I touched the compass pendant hanging around my neck, feeling its weight. I'm thinking it's time to open this. Grandma said in her letter that when I needed answers about Maxwell's true practices, I'd find them here. Well then, Emma grinned, her fingers already hovering over her laptop keyboard. Let's see what evidence your grandmother left you. The pendant's clasp was stiff, as if it hadn't been opened in years. When it finally clicked open, a tiny microst card fell into my palm, and I knew with absolute certainty that my life in the fashion industry was about to change forever. At the Grand Plaza Ballroom. The Grand Plaza's ballroom sparkled like a showroom during Fashion Week, but all that glitter couldn't mask the tension in the air. I smoothed down my emerald green dress, made from recycled materials, definitely not the designer sample my mother had sent over, and felt Emma squeeze my arm reassuringly. Ready to expose this? She whispered. As I'll ever be. I touched the compass at my throat, thinking of the files hidden in my clutch. The data from the microst card had revealed everything, but timing would be crucial. Michael appeared beside us, looking sharp in his sustainably sourced tuxedo. Heads up. Hurricane Diana incoming at 2 o'clock. My mother glided toward us, a vision in couture silk and diamonds. Her smile was catalog perfect, but her eyes were arctic when they landed on me. Darling, you came. Though I see you couldn't manage to wear the Valentino I sent over. Mother, I kissed her cheek, feeling the stiffness in her posture. Happy anniversary. Yes, well. She glanced at Emma with barely concealed disdain. I don't recall the invitation, including a +1. Emma's my sustainability consultant, I said firmly. You did say this event was about Maxwell's future. Before my mother could respond, Davidson approached with 2 champagne flutes. Diana, you're needed by the stage. The EPA representatives just arrived. She plastered on her press-ready smile. We'll talk later, Sarah. Do try not to mention your little eco-projects tonight. This is about real fashion. As she walked away, Davidson pressed one of the champagne flutes into my hand. Drink this. You'll need it. His eyes darted meaningfully to my clutch. Is everything ready? I nodded. Emma's got the data prepared. Got what prepared? A familiar voice made me freeze. I turned to find Nathan, my ex, standing there in an impeccably tailored designer suit. Sarah, you look different. Nathan, I forced myself to breathe normally. I didn't expect to see you here. Your mother invited me. His smile was sharp. Said something about keeping industry analysts close. Emma stepped between us. Industry analysts who dated her daughter for 2 years, then dumped her after a suspicious meeting with said mother about Maxwell's overseas factories. Ancient history. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Though I'm curious why you're both looking so prepared for something. Michael smoothly intervened. Nathan, I heard the Vogue editor was asking about you earlier. She's by the fountain. As Nathan walked away, I downed my champagne. He knows something's up. He suspects, Davidson corrected. But he can't know. Nobody does, except the 4 of us. He checked his watch. 20 minutes until your mother's sustainability initiative announcement. Are you sure about this? The memory of the file's contents flashed through my mind. The proof of my mother's deception, not just of environmental regulations, but of everything my grandmother had built. Hidden reports of toxic dyes dumped into rivers, documents detailing unsafe working conditions, evidence of greenwashing campaigns designed to deceive conscious consumers. I'm sure. Sarah, a shrill voice cut through the crowd. My Aunt Patricia air-kissed my cheeks. Darling, we've missed you at the industry galas. Your mother says you're still doing that recycled clothing thing. Actually, I smiled sweetly. I just designed a sustainable textile collection that's been picked up by 3 major ethical fashion brands. Oh, her face fell slightly. How creative of you. As the minutes ticked by, more industry insiders approached. Each interaction a carefully choreographed dance of passive-aggressive comments about real fashion versus trend sustainability. I watched my mother work the room, every gesture calculated for maximum impact on the attending press. Emma's phone buzzed. All the evidence is uploaded and ready, she whispered. One text from me, and every fashion blog and environmental watchdog gets the full report. Michael touched my shoulder. A last chance to back out. I looked around the room at the luxury, the excess, the carefully maintained illusions of ethical manufacturing. My grandmother's words from her letter echoed in my mind. The truth about fashion shouldn't be fast or disposable, even when people prefer a pretty lie. Ladies and gentlemen, a voice boomed over the speakers. Please welcome our CEO and visionary leader, Diana Maxwell. My mother ascended the stage, radiant in her designer silk. The crowd applauded as she took the microphone, but I noticed Davidson positioning himself near the exit, phone in hand. Thank you all for coming tonight, my mother began. Sustainable fashion has become quite the buzzword lately, which is why I'm thrilled to announce Maxwell Fashion Group's new global sustainability initiative. I felt the weight of the compass pendant against my skin, thinking of my grandmother's strength, her genuine commitment to ethical manufacturing, her foresight in documenting everything. Sarah, darling, my mother's voice turned saccharine. Come join me on stage. As our future head of sustainability. Emma squeezed my hand. Showtime. As I walked toward the stage, phone notifications began pinging throughout the room. I saw my mother's eyes flick to her phone on the podium, then widen in horror. The truth about Maxwell's practices was already spreading, photo by photo, document by document, across every fashion blog and news site. I took my place beside her, feeling stronger with each step. The spotlight was harsh, but I didn't flinch. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I needed to be. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the microphone. "Today marks a new chapter in sustainable fashion," she said, unaware that her carefully planned greenwashing campaign was about to shatter like a cheap sequin. "As you all know," my mother continued, her voice carrying across the now quieting ballroom, "Maxwell has always been committed to innovative fashion practices." And she paused as more phones chimed. Her own screen lit up again, and I saw her jaw clench. "Is something wrong, Mother?" I asked innocently, loud enough for the microphone to catch. She shot me a warning look before plastering on her signature photo-ready smile. "As I was saying, today I'm announcing Maxwell's revolutionary approach to sustainable fashion. Sarah, my only daughter, will be leading our new eco-friendly initiative." More notifications pinged throughout the room. Murmurs started rising from the crowd. "Oh my God," someone gasped. "These factory photos. The chemical waste reports. Are these real?" My mother's hand tightened on the microphone. "If I could have everyone's attention, please." These interruptions are quite unprofessional. But the murmurs grew louder. I saw Nathan staring at his phone, his face pale. Aunt Patricia was frantically whispering to her PR team. The EPA representatives were already heading for the exit. "Mother," I said clearly into the microphone, "maybe you should check your social media. There seems to be some interesting news breaking about Maxwell's overseas manufacturing practices." She glanced at her screen again, and this time the color drained from her face. This is obviously some sort of hack. A mistake." "No mistake." I pulled the original documents from my clutch. "I have the proof right here. Grandmother's original sustainable manufacturing guidelines. Your signature on the orders changing them. Dated 15 years ago. The real story behind Maxwell's eco-friendly claims." The crowd had completely abandoned any pretense of listening to her speech. Phones were being passed around, shocked conversations erupting everywhere. The toxic dye dumps in the rivers. Those sustainable bamboo fabrics were actually synthetic. The working conditions in those factories. My mother grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging in. "What have you done?" she hissed. I pulled away, speaking directly into the microphone. "Why don't you tell them, Mother? Tell them how you abandoned Grandma Catherine's ethical manufacturing principles. How you've been greenwashing Maxwell's image while poisoning rivers and exploiting workers. You ungrateful little." She reached for the documents in my hand, but I stepped back. "Careful, Mother. The fashion press is watching." Davidson stepped onto the stage, his presence commanding attention. "As the company's legal counsel, I can confirm these documents are authentic. Catherine Maxwell left very specific instructions about their release." My mother's composure finally cracked. "You knew. You helped her with this betrayal of everything we built." "Catherine knew everything," Davidson replied calmly. "She spent her last years documenting the truth, protecting her real legacy." He turned to address the crowd. The full documentation has been sent to the EPA, labor rights organizations, and every major fashion publication. You can't do this, my mother snarled, grabbing the microphone again. I built this empire. Sarah, you think you can destroy our brand like this? Fine. Let me make my announcement. As of today, you are officially cut off. No shares, no position, nothing. I laughed, the sound echoing through the speakers. Did you really think this was about money or position? Emma appeared at the edge of the stage, holding up her phone. The story's trending. #Maxwell Exposed is #1 on Twitter. Every sustainable fashion watchdog is picking it up. My mother lunged for Emma's phone, but Michael stepped between them. Enough, Aunt Diana. The truth about Maxwell's practices is out. The ballroom had descended into chaos. Fashion editors were making frantic phone calls. Investors were rushing to contact their brokers, and environmental journalists were already gathering outside, alerted by Emma's carefully timed press release. Sarah, my mother's voice turned pleading. We can fix this. Whatever you want, your own sustainable line, complete creative control, we can make it happen. I touched my grandmother's compass pendant. You still don't understand. This isn't a negotiation. This is about integrity in fashion. Nathan approached the stage, his face twisted with anger. You told me Sarah was going to destroy the company with her environmental concerns. That's why you wanted me to break up with her. You were the one destroying Maxwell's reputation. I told him, my mother spat, what needed to be said, just like I've been doing to protect this company. Security guards appeared at the ballroom entrance. Davidson nodded to them. They're here to secure the premises and company documents. Standard procedure in corporate fraud cases. My mother's face hardened into a mask of fury. You'll regret this. All of you. She turned to the scattered crowd. This is a misunderstanding. My daughter is trying to sabotage us with her extreme environmental views. But no one was listening anymore. Her carefully curated audience was deserting her, along with her carefully crafted image of ethical fashion. I stepped away from the microphone, my part done. As security approached the stage, I felt a strange mixture of triumph and sadness. This wasn't just exposure, it was liberation. Sarah, Michael called. The press wants a statement about sustainable fashion. I touched the compass pendant one last time, thinking of my grandmother's words. True sustainability isn't a marketing campaign. It's a commitment to doing what's right. Taking a deep breath, I headed toward the ballroom doors, leaving my mother's crumbling fast fashion empire behind. The real work was just beginning. Camera flashes exploded as I stepped into the hotel lobby. Emma flanking my left side, Michael my right. Reporters shouted questions from behind the security line. Miss Maxwell, can you confirm the allegations about toxic dyes? What evidence do you have about the working conditions? Is it true Maxwell's eco-friendly line was completely fabricated? Before I could respond, Davidson appeared with two stern-looking individuals in suits. Miss Sarah, these are Agents Parker and Rodriguez from the Environmental Protection Agency. They need to speak with you immediately. We were escorted to a private conference room away from the chaos. Through the glass walls, I could see my mother being led out by security, her perfect makeup now streaked with tears and rage. Miss Maxwell, Agent Parker began, we've been investigating Maxwell's overseas manufacturing facilities for months, but couldn't build a solid case without internal documentation. What you've provided changes everything. There's more, Michael interrupted, pulling out his phone. Show them what you found, Sarah. I hesitated. Are you sure? This part wasn't in Grandma's plans. Because she didn't know about it, he replied. Show them. I pulled up the encrypted files Emma had helped me access. These are records of transactions between Maxwell and several shell companies in countries with no environmental regulations. But look at the dates. They start just weeks after my father's workplace accident. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. Are you suggesting the accident at the textile factory was Sarah? Nathan burst into the room, ignoring the agent's protests. We need to talk. Now. This is a federal investigation. Agent Parker started, but I held up my hand. 5 minutes, I said. Nathan knows something about those factories. Once outside, Nathan paced the hallway. Your mother didn't just pay me to break up with you. She offered me a position overseeing those shell companies. Said it was a special project that needed discretion. Emma crossed her arms. And you're just mentioning this now? I turned it down, he said quickly. It felt wrong. But I did some digging afterward, Sarah. Those factories, they're connected to the accident that killed your father. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. What? Your father was investigating chemical disposal practices before he died, Michael added quietly. I found his old reports in Grandma's study last week. I was waiting for the right moment to tell you. A commotion erupted in the lobby. Through the glass, I saw my mother breaking away from security, running toward us. Sarah, you have no idea what you're doing. Your father, 2 agents intercepted her, but not before she could throw a USB drive at my feet. The truth, she screamed as they dragged her away. It's all there. He gave me no choice. Emma snatched up the drive before anyone else could move. Give me 2 minutes, she said, pulling out her laptop. We huddled around her as she worked her tech magic. Oh my God, she whispered as files populated her screen. Sarah, these are emails between your mother and someone called the supplier. They're discussing your father's removal from the factory inspection team. The room spun. Michael grabbed my arm to steady me. She had him silenced, I whispered. Because he was going to expose the toxic waste disposal, Michael finished. Agents, Davidson called from the doorway. You need to see this. As the federal agents rushed to examine the new evidence, I felt a buzz from my phone. An email from an account I didn't recognize, but the subject line made my blood freeze. Your grandmother knew about the factories. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a video file. My grandmother recording herself in what looked like her final days. My dearest Sarah, her voice crackled through my phone speaker. If you're watching this, then everything has come to light. But there's one last thing you need to know. Your father left something for you, something your mother never found. Go to the old textile factory. In the sample room, behind the 3rd storage unit. What you find there will complete the picture. The old factory. Emma looked up from her laptop. Isn't that where my father had his accident? I finished. We need to go. Now. Michael already had his car keys out. I'll drive. Wait, Nathan called as we turned to leave. I'm coming too. I owe you that much. Emma packed up her equipment. We should hurry. Once your mother's lawyers get involved, that factory will be crawling with people. I nodded to the agents, who were deep in discussion with Davidson about the chemical disposal records. This was no longer just about exposing Maxwell's greenwashing. This was about justice for my father. As we rushed toward the parking garage, my phone buzzed again. Another anonymous email, this time with just 4 words. The dyes were deadly. The night wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. At the abandoned factory, the old Maxwell textile factory loomed before us, a dark silhouette against the midnight sky. Rain pelted the windshield as Michael killed the engine, plunging us into silence broken only by distant thunder. Security systems disabled, Emma announced from the back seat, closing her laptop. We've got 20 minutes before it resets. I still think we should have told the EPA agents, Nathan muttered, but followed as we rushed through the rain toward the sample room entrance. The old structure creaked in the wind, smelling of mothballs and abandoned fabric. I flicked on my phone's flashlight, illuminating rows of dusty sample storage units. Third unit, back wall, Michael reminded me, already running his hands along the metal shelving. Here. This panel's loose. Together, we pried it free, revealing a small cavity. Inside sat a waterproof document case, undisturbed for years. Sarah, Emma's urgent whisper cut through the darkness. Car coming up the drive. Quick, get that case open, Nathan urged, peering through a grimy window. My hands shook as I worked the combination lock. My father's old factory ID number, just as I'd guessed. Inside, I found a USB drive, several folders of chemical analysis reports, and a letter addressed to me in my father's handwriting. Headlights swept across the sample room walls. We need to move, Michael hissed. Now. Back door. Through the dye storage area, I whispered, grabbing the case. To the old testing lab. We slipped out just as voices approached the sample room. In the rain-soaked darkness, I caught glimpses of men in hazmat suits. Not EPA, not security. The old testing lab was small but secure, with thick walls that muffled the storm. Emma immediately connected the USB drive to her laptop, while I spread the documents across the dusty lab bench. Your father was meticulous, Nathan said, scanning the papers. Chemical composition reports, toxicity levels, contamination data. Guys, Emma's voice was tight. These files, they're not just about toxic dyes. There's a whole network, chemical suppliers, waste disposal companies, inspection officials. Your father uncovered a massive environmental crime ring. Thunder crashed outside as I unfolded my father's letter with trembling fingers. My dearest Sarah, I read aloud. If you're reading this, then I failed to stop the toxic disposal program. But I trust you'll finish what I started. Your mother isn't working alone. The network she's part of has infiltrated every level of. A sharp crack split the air. The lab window exploded inward, sending us diving for cover. They're shooting, Michael shouted. Everyone down. Emma frantically typed on her laptop, uploading everything to her secure server. Done. Another shot rang out. Nathan grabbed the document case. We need to get out of here. The drainage tunnel. I gasped, remembering my father's old facility maps. There's a chemical waste tunnel under the lab. Leads to the treatment plant. Sarah, a familiar voice called from outside. We just want to destroy the evidence. That's impossible, I whispered. That's the supplier. He's supposed to be in prison. Apparently not, Michael said grimly. Sarah, that tunnel, Nathan urged. I led them to the decontamination shower area, pulling up the loose drainage grate to reveal a dark passage below. As we dropped down one by one, I heard the lab door splinter. They're in the tunnel, someone shouted above us. Call the disposal team. We ran through the darkness, our phone lights bouncing off wet concrete walls. The tunnel seemed endless, the sounds of pursuit growing closer. There, Emma pointed to a maintenance ladder. That has to lead out. I climbed first, pushing against the heavy cover. Rain poured in as we emerged one by one behind an old chemical storage facility. My car's 2 blocks away, Emma panted. We can make it if, Sarah, run. Nathan's voice stopped me cold. He was staring at his phone. You need to see this. A news alert showed my mother being released from custody, smiling at cameras as her lawyers made statements about industrial espionage and corporate sabotage. How? I gasped. Your mother has connections. Look who's standing behind her. Michael pointed to a figure in the background, the supplier, very much free, and wearing an EPA consultant badge. This goes higher than just toxic dyes, Emma said, clutching her laptop. Way higher. My phone buzzed. Another anonymous email. Safe house ready. Coordinates attached. The chemical evidence must survive. We can't trust any officials now, I realized, thinking of my grandmother's warning. This isn't just about fashion sustainability anymore. This is about tires screeched at the end of the street. Black SUVs appeared from both directions. Run. Michael grabbed my arm. Split up. Meet at the coordinates. Go. As we scattered into the rain-soaked night, I clutched my father's letter against my chest. Whatever this toxic waste ring was, whoever was involved, I knew one thing for certain. The truth about these chemicals had cost my father his life, and now it might cost us ours. Hours later, the safe house turned out to be an abandoned sustainable textile workshop in the industrial district. I slipped through the back entrance, heart pounding, checking every shadow. Emma was already inside, her laptop casting a blue glow across her face. Michael's 2 minutes out, she whispered. No sign of Nathan. What have you found? The files are encrypted, but I've cracked the first layer. She turned the screen toward me. Your father was building a case against something called Operation Clean Slate. Look at these names: chemical companies, disposal facilities, certification boards. The door creaked. We both froze until Michael's familiar whistle signaled all clear. You're bleeding, I noticed as he joined us. Cut myself climbing over the chemical plant fence. He pulled out his phone. But I got something. Recorded a conversation between the supplier and someone else while I was hiding. He pressed play. The girl has the toxicity reports. Destroy them. She doesn't understand what she's dealing with. Operation Clean Slate must be protected at all costs. Yes, even if it means. The recording cut off as the workshop's security light suddenly blazed to life. Footsteps echoed from multiple directions. The storage loft. Emma pointed to a catwalk above the main production area. We scrambled up the maintenance ladder, just as the main doors burst open. My mother walked in, flanked by the supplier and two men in hazmat gear. She looked different now, colder, more dangerous. Nothing like the fashion CEO I'd known. "Sarah," she called out, "stop this foolishness. You have no idea what kind of chemicals you're dealing with." "She's right." Nathan's voice made us all jump. He emerged from the shadows of the catwalk behind us, wearing protective gear and carrying a detection meter. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but this is bigger than Maxwell's sustainability lies. You were working for them all along, I realized. The breakup, the factory. You were monitoring me. Operation Clean Slate keeps the fashion industry running," he said. "Your father didn't understand that. Neither do you." "Tell her the real truth, Diana," a new voice commanded. Davidson stepped into the workshop, but not the Davidson I knew. This one moved with military precision, his lawyer persona gone. My mother's face twisted. "She's not ready." "I'm right here," I called down, anger overriding fear. "Stop talking about me like I'm some naive sustainable fashion advocate. What is Operation Clean Slate?" "Profit," Davidson answered. "Pure profit. The fashion industry runs on cheap, toxic dyes and secret disposal. Your grandmother built more than an ethical brand. She discovered a network that controls everything from chemical certifications to environmental policies. Your father found out and thought he could stop it. He was wrong. And you killed him for it," I spat. "We gave him a choice," my mother said. "He chose his principles over industry reality." Emma's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Almost done," she whispered. "Keep them talking." "Why tell me now?" I demanded. "Because you're meant to take your place in the organization," the supplier called up. "It's your inheritance. Your grandmother knew that." "Why do you think she left you those breadcrumbs?" "She was testing your commitment to the industry." "You're lying," I said, but doubt crept in. "Grandma wanted me to expose the truth." "The truth?" My mother laughed. "The truth is that your grandmother ran Operation Clean Slate for 20 years. Everything I did, I learned from her. The toxic disposal, the bribes, they're all part of keeping fashion affordable." "Got it," Emma whispered triumphantly. "Files decrypted and uploaded. Every environmental agency and investigative journalist will have the evidence in 3-2. Phones began buzzing throughout the workshop. Davidson checked his and cursed. "She's broadcast everything. The chemical formulas, the disposal sites, all of it. Kill them." The supplier ordered. "They'll destroy the entire industry." Gunfire erupted. Michael tackled me behind a dye vat as bullets sparked off metal. Emma scrambled toward a fire escape, her laptop clutched to her chest. "This way," Nathan shouted, but his next words were cut off by an explosion that rocked the building. Through the smoke, I saw figures rappelling through the skylights, tactical teams in EPA hazmat suits. Environmental Protection Agency's Special Response Team. Everyone down. "This is a contaminated site. Sarah," my mother screamed as agents surrounded her. "You don't understand. We were protecting the industry." I stood slowly, watching as the supplier and Davidson were cuffed, as Nathan dropped his meter and surrendered. The workshop filled with federal agents, real ones this time, in proper protective gear. We'd learned to spot the difference. Miss Maxwell, a female agent, approached. Agent Torres, EPA Criminal Investigation Division. We've been building this case for years. Your father's chemical analysis was the key we needed. My grandmother. I had to know. Was she really part of it? The agent handed me a final envelope. She left this with us, to be delivered when Operation Clean Slate was exposed. Said you'd know when to read it. As dawn broke through the skylights, I looked down at my mother being led away in handcuffs. She'd stopped screaming and now just stared at me with something like pride in her eyes. "You really are my daughter," she called out. "More ruthless than you know." I clutched the envelope, feeling the weight of secrets still unrevealed. This wasn't over. The fashion industry's toxic truth was just beginning to unravel. In the EPA safe room, the EEP's decontamination room felt sterile and cold as I stared at my grandmother's final envelope. Emma sat beside me while Michael paced nervously. Agent Torres watched from the doorway. "Whatever's in there." Emma squeezed my hand. "We're with you." I broke the seal and pulled out a single photograph. It showed my grandmother standing in front of the old textile factory. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a much younger version of Agent Torres. "It's time you knew everything," Torres said, closing the door. "Your grandmother was never part of Operation Clean Slate. She was part of the task force trying to shut it down." "What?" I looked at the photo again. But my mother said, "Your mother saw what she wanted to see. Catherine was our deep cover operative for 20 years. She built Maxwell specifically to infiltrate their toxic supply network." Michael stopped pacing. "That's why she kept all those chemical records, and why she chose Sarah." Emma realized. She knew they'd try to recruit her into the disposal operation next. Torres nodded. "Catherine's last message to us said she'd left her granddaughter a trail of evidence. Said you'd know what to do with them." My hands trembled as I found a handwritten note behind the photograph. "My dearest Sarah," I read aloud. "I'm sorry for the burden I've placed on you, but I knew you had your father's integrity and your own fierce commitment to sustainable fashion. Operation Clean Slate tried to poison everything they touched, but they couldn't poison you. Now one final task remains." A knock interrupted us. Another agent entered with a hazmat report. "Ma'am, we've got chemical readings spiking at all the identified disposal sites." Torres turned to me. "Operation Clean Slate is trying to destroy evidence. We've frozen their known accounts, but there's more." "The underground storage tanks," I said, remembering the factory documents. "Emergency purge protocols." My father mapped them all. "We need to stop the dumping. Lives are at stake," Torres urged. "Every hour those chemicals leak." I looked at Emma. She nodded and pulled out her laptop. "The shutdown codes. They're in your compass pendant, aren't they?" My fingers went to my grandmother's compass. Inside, behind the traditional face, was a tiny microchip I'd never noticed before. 15 minutes, Emma said, connecting the chip. "That's all I need to access the control systems." Suddenly, the building's hazard alarms blared. Emergency lights started flashing. "They're here." Torres drew her weapon. "Sarah, You and your friends need to. The door burst open. Nathan stood there, his hazmat suit torn, his detection meter still beeping. Sarah, run. They're activating the purge sequence. How did you? Torres began, but gunfire cut her off. The windows exploded inward as black-clad figures repelled into the room. The shutdown codes. Emma screamed, shielding her laptop. Almost there. Michael grabbed a fallen agent's respirator, providing cover as we scrambled for the emergency exit. Nathan joined us, proving his change of heart by taking down 2 attackers. This way. Torres led us through a maze of corridors. We have a sealed command center in the basement. More explosions rocked the building. Through the chaos, I heard my mother's voice on the facility's PAS system. Sarah, stop this now. Some chemicals need to stay buried. We reached the basement level. Emma's laptop chimed. Access granted. I can shut down the purge systems from here. Look out. Nathan tackled me as a toxic spray burst from an overhead pipe. The supplier appeared at the end of the hallway in full protective gear, his face contorted with rage. The truth dies with you, he snarled, reaching for a valve control. 3 shots rang out. The supplier crumpled, revealing my mother standing behind him, wearing her own hazmat suit. She'd somehow escaped custody in the chaos. Mom? I stared in disbelief. I won't let them poison my daughter, she said simply. Not like they poisoned your father. Torres trained her weapon on my mother. Drop the control pad, it's done anyway. My mother smiled sadly. Operation Clean Slate is finished. Your grandmother won, Sarah. Just like she planned. More agents flooded the hallway as alerts pinged on everyone's phones. Emma showed me her screen, breaking news about mass arrests, exposed toxic dumping sites, a web of chemical crime unraveling in real time. Catherine would be proud, my mother said, as agents restrained her again. You're stronger than I ever was. I opened my grandmother's compass one last time. Behind the microchip was one final message, tiny words engraved inside. True change starts with one person brave enough to stand up. 1 month later, Sarah, Torres called. We need your statement for the congressional hearing. But first, your grandmother left something else for you. The deed to Maxwell's original ethical textile facilities. Everything she protected from Operation Clean Slate. It's all yours now. I looked at my friends. Emma still tracking chemical disposal data. Michael reviewing environmental regulations. Even Nathan, who'd chosen the right side in the end. Then at my mother being led to her sentencing hearing, her perfectly crafted world of toxic profits finally shattered. What will you do now? Emma asked softly. I touched the compass pendant, thinking of my grandmother's courage, my father's sacrifice, and my own journey to the truth. I'm going to rebuild Maxwell, I said. The right way this time. Epilogue. The autumn breeze rustled through the courtyard as workers removed the last Maxwell Fashion Group sign from the building. In its place, a new logo emerged. Maxwell Sustainable Textiles. Your grandmother would love this, Emma said, watching the transformation from beside me. Using the old facilities for truly sustainable production. Brilliant. And the EPA approved our new certification program this morning, Michael added, passing me a coffee. The legitimate textile testing labs will help other companies transition to clean production. My phone buzzed. A message from Agent Torres. Final toxic site cleaned. Thought you should know. I showed the text to Emma and Michael. A small victory in a much larger fight. The fashion industry's path to true sustainability was just beginning, but at least now we had a chance to make it right. Ready? Emma asked, gathering her things. The Sustainable Textile Summit starts in an hour. I touched the compass pendant one last time, then stepped forward into the future we'd fought so hard to create.
This kind of meal doesn't compare to fine French dining. My daughter started throwing the food I had prepared into the kitchen trash. We don't need simple meals like this. I'll clean it up for you. Compared to the meal we just had, this is garbage. Though I had been ridiculed for my lack of education, today's treatment was unbearable. I stormed out of the house and contacted a certain person. This would lead to the downfall of both my husband and my daughter's lives. My name is Anne. Due to family circumstances, I had to drop out of school and start working, eventually leaving the job I loved when I got married. The company that hired me despite my lack of education had been a comfort, but Tom, my husband whom I met through a friend, was possessive and forced me to quit, saying he would provide for us. Since then, I've been a housewife, living with our daughter Rosa and Tom. Rosa recently got into a prestigious school in the area. She is an excellent student aiming to become a lawyer, studying hard for law school. However, she has a problem. She's become arrogant, perhaps too proud of her academic achievements, and has a tendency to look down on others. I've repeatedly told her to stop being condescending, especially towards those she deems less intelligent, but she never listens. When I sought Tom's help, he didn't see her attitude as an issue. Tom is a manager at a company and rarely comes home. When he does, he dotes on Rosa instead of disciplining her. In contrast, we hardly talk as a couple. I've long told myself his work keeps him busy, but sometimes he comes home with the scent of perfume, constantly on his smartphone, making me suspect he's having an affair. As a housewife, I often feel my voice goes unheard in the household. You've been coming home late lately. Is work that busy? Huh? Work is always busy. Whatever you're suspecting, it's none of your business, Anne. When I casually asked, Tom's response was always dismissive and aggressive. If I confronted him about cheating, he'd likely just feign ignorance. Both Tom and Rosa have increasingly disregarded me since Rosa entered high school and became more obsessed with academic status. Rosa, could you help with the chores? I think I have a fever. I had been feeling unwell all morning. Despite trying to get through the daily tasks, my dizzy spells made it impossible. I asked her for help when she returned from school. Why should I do chores? It's your job, Mom. You're a housewife with nothing else to do, so at least keep up with the housework. With that, she went straight to her room upstairs. It seemed my poor health didn't matter to her. She used to be more considerate. Tom's influence had turned her into a selfish and arrogant person. While I tried to raise her to be self-reliant, Tom spoiled her endlessly. He gave her allowance without limits and bought her anything she wanted. Even when I warned that this would make her spoiled, Tom never stopped indulging her, insisting she should have whatever she wanted. And before I knew it, Rosa started to mock me. Tom, who graduated from a prestigious university, values education highly and has a lot of pride. It was clearly his influence. Mom, it's so embarrassing that you dropped out of college. All my friends' parents graduated from well-known universities. I can't even tell anyone about you. I might have dropped out, but I got a job and earned my own money. I'm not ashamed of that. Yeah, but it was probably at some small company where you didn't earn much. Looking at you really makes me realize how important education is. It's good you married Dad. Otherwise, you'd be living in poverty. It's terrible to talk like that. People who belittle others over education are the ones who are truly low level. I usually don't talk back much, but the harshness of her words made me react without thinking. Even if you talk back, it's not convincing at all. Yeah. Why are you so angry? It's the truth. If you were so upset, you should have at least graduated high school, Anne. Tom knows why I couldn't continue my education, yet he joins her in mocking me instead of scolding her. I also once aimed to become a doctor, studying hard for my dreams just like Rosa. I was good at studying, my grades were excellent, and people said it was a given that I would get into a top-tier school, even more competitive than hers. However, when I was in middle school, my father died suddenly in an accident. Losing the breadwinner, my mother became a single parent, and I had no choice but to give up on further education and drop out to work. I never intended to tell Rosa this, but it was clear she would call me a liar even if I did. She would surely mock me, calling it an excuse. Why did things turn out this way? We promised to build a modest but happy family when we got married. Now, far from happiness, I felt alienated in my own home. Contrary to their attitude towards me, the two of them got along well because they were so alike. They often went out together on purpose, leaving me behind. At first, I felt lonely, but recently, I've become numb to such treatment, feeling nothing. However, when I think about continuing a life where my family treats me like a housekeeper, I become very depressed. In addition to my relationship with Rosa and Tom, there was another person causing me headaches. That was my sister Betty. Maybe feeling lonely after losing our father, Betty left home after graduating middle school and started seeing multiple men. Even after becoming an adult, she continued such a lifestyle without holding a steady job, frequently coming to me to ask for money. Again. I sighed as I saw the unexpected visitor on the doorbell screen. I drank too much yesterday. Hey, give me some water. Betty, clearly drunk even in the middle of the day, sprawled out on my living room sofa. Despite being older than me, she looked sloppy and dressed too young for her age, being in her late 30s. Reeking of alcohol and strong perfume, Betty asked me for $500, saying she lost all her money gambling this month. Don't gamble if you're not working. But my boyfriend loves slots. When I'm with him, the money just disappears. I can't help it. Without any sign of remorse, she demanded money, and I reluctantly handed her an envelope with cash. Betty was the type of person who would go on a rampage if I didn't give her money, so this was the easiest way to deal with her. Once, I refused her demands because they were becoming too frequent, and an enraged Betty went on a destructive spree, breaking furniture and dishes until I agreed to pay her. Thanks. You really are the most dependable sister. And you've always been so convenient. I'll come by again when I'm in trouble, okay? Taking the money, Betty left, looking pleased with herself. As she said, I've always been used. Everyone around me knew that I wouldn't stand up for myself, so they all took advantage of me. Hey, did Betty come over again? Rosa, who must have passed Betty outside, asked with a look of disdain. Welcome back. Yeah, just a bit. I tried to gloss over it, but Rosa knew that Betty came over whenever she was in need of money. It was for money again, wasn't it? You know, you two are really alike. Both of you are so awful. The only decent people in this family are Dad and me. As usual, Rosa made her sarcastic remarks, and I didn't bother to respond. I knew that whatever I said would just come back at me tenfold. Tom, Rosa, and Betty were all sources of distress for me. Time passed, and Rosa, having studied hard, got into her dream college. Even though she often said hurtful things, she was still my precious daughter. I decided to celebrate by making her favorite dishes and ordering from a fancy steakhouse. I told Tom and Rosa that we'd celebrate at home with a special meal. But when the time came, neither of them returned home. The food on the table grew colder and colder. They finally came home late that night. "That was delicious." "Thanks, Dad." "It was a reward for all your hard work, Rosa." I splurged. "It was really great. Let's go again sometime." I heard them chatting happily at the door. "Oh, what's this?" "We've already eaten." Rosa walked into the living room and saw the meal I had prepared, then gave a mocking smile. It seemed they had gone out to eat without me. "Didn't I tell you?" "Rosa and I went out for a celebratory French dinner." "You didn't tell me that. And I told both of you I was preparing a special meal for tonight." They smirked, clearly enjoying my reaction. "Maybe you forgot because you're so dumb, Mom. Obviously, high-end French cuisine is better than some ordinary steak." "You're really such an airhead," Rosa said, starting to throw the steak I had made into the kitchen trash. "What are you doing? It's a special day, and I don't want to see a gloomy face or some cheap meal. I'll clean it up for you." "Rosa, that's too much." "But honestly, compared to what we had earlier, this stuff is trash. If you were going to prepare something, it should have been better." The food I had lovingly prepared, including Rosa's favorite dishes, mercilessly thrown away. "Why, I can't believe this. How can you do this? Do you hate me that much?" Everything I had been holding back poured out. And I couldn't help but raise my voice. "That's the attitude that's so annoying. Just because you're my mom, don't boss me around. You're a dropout and a low-level person." Whenever Rosa and I argued, she always said this. To Rosa, it didn't matter that I was her mother. Any opinion from someone she deemed less intelligent was worthless. "I wish I had a smarter, more respectable mom. I wish I could replace you with someone else." "That's a great idea. You can go ahead and replace me." Tom laughed at the idea. As I listened to their conversation, I realized that there was no place for me in this house anymore. "Fine. I can't live with you anymore after being treated like this. I'm leaving." With those words, I left the living room and went to my bedroom to start packing. "Why are you being so dramatic?" "I was just telling the truth." "Don't get so mad. We don't need her here anyway. If you're expecting us to beg you to stay, think again." They looked at me with smug expressions, not bothering to stop me. They clearly thought they'd be just fine without me. Once I finished packing, I turned to Rosa, who still had that infuriating look on her face. "Rosa, you may be smart and clever, but you lack any sense of empathy." "What? Are you, a dropout, trying to lecture me?" "What kind of tone is that?" Tom yelled at me, but I held her gaze and spoke firmly. "Do you really think someone who looks down on and mocks others can be a lawyer? I believe you're the last person who should ever become one." A lawyer is supposed to help those in need, to support the vulnerable. But Rosa had absorbed Tom's values, showing no hesitation in belittling and hurting others. No matter how intelligent she was, I couldn't see her as fit to be a lawyer. I had tried to correct her behavior over the years. But as she grew older, she began to boast about her intelligence, ignoring my pleas for kindness. With Tom indulging her, Rosa had become an irredeemably selfish person. "It seems I've failed as a part of this family, so I'll leave as you wish." "Don't worry. As Rosa suggested, I'll call the real mom and let her know to come here. I smiled at their shocked faces and walked out with my packed bags. I started walking towards my parents' house. On the way, I called someone. I told them to go to the house where Tom and Rosa were waiting. How does a dropout plan to live on her own? Tom still couldn't resist making snide remarks, showing no remorse as I left. Finally, I feel relieved. Rosa, on the other hand, was a bit shaken but tried to maintain a strong front. Despite all the times she had insulted me, she hadn't really expected me to leave. Dad, what did Mom mean by the real mom? What's going on? Well, that's... Tom stammered in response to Rosa's question. As the awkward silence stretched, the doorbell rang. Is it Mom? I bet she came back because she couldn't handle it, Rosa said as she headed to the door and opened it hastily. But it wasn't me standing there, it was my sister, Betty. With her unkempt hair and overwhelming perfume, Betty hugged a bewildered Rosa and said I could stay here from now on. Nice to meet you, Rosa. Rosa thought Betty's obnoxious grin looked disturbingly similar to her own. Betty walked in and made herself at home in the living room. Unable to stand it, Rosa called me. Mom, what's going on? Why is Betty coming to our house? Why? What a strange question. Didn't you say you wanted a different mom? So, I brought your real mom. My real mom? I explained everything to a confused Rosa. When Tom was in college, he got Betty, who was then in high school, pregnant. After giving birth to Rosa, the two were still students and had no financial means. So, Betty and my mother took care of the baby, but Betty soon abandoned Tom and Rosa and started dating other men. Later, the smooth-talking Tom tricked his sister, me, into marrying him. Since I couldn't have children, I adopted Rosa, who was still very young. No! That's a lie! It's all true. If you don't believe me, ask your dad and Betty. No! I can't believe this woman is my mom. Come back, Mom! Please! You wanted a different mom, right? Well, this is your real mom, Rosa. The three of you should live together happily. And with that, I hung up the phone. Later, I sent a letter explaining that I would never return home again, along with divorce papers to Tom. As expected, Tom, who had a mistress, agreed to the divorce, and we became strangers. Due to his promiscuous behavior, Tom and Betty didn't get along even after their breakup. Tom left Rosa behind and moved in with his mistress. He practically abandoned the household, only sending the minimum amount of money to cover living expenses. Betty tracked down Tom's apartment where he lived with his mistress and demanded proper financial support. When Tom refused, Betty caused a scene, leading to neighbors calling the police, and it turned into a minor scandal. Rumors spread, and Tom's affair became public knowledge. Given the strict compliance policies at his company, Tom was transferred to a regional branch. His income drastically decreased as he was demoted from an executive at headquarters to a regular employee. Unable to afford college tuition, Rosa had to get a part-time job. However, Rosa, who had never done a part-time job or even helped much at home, kept making mistakes at work and quickly switched jobs. As a result, she couldn't save enough for her tuition. She asked her high school friends for loans, but her arrogant attitude had alienated them, and they refused to help. In fact, rumors spread about her asking for money, and she became an outcast among her former classmates. Unbeknownst to Rosa, Tom had only been providing the bare minimum for household expenses. While we managed to get by, Betty wouldn't be able to handle such a situation. Mom! I might have to drop out of college. Help me! Talk to your real mom, Rosa. I'm just a stranger now. Don't call me mom only when it's convenient for you. I had lost my patience with her, who had broken down and come crying to me, so I coldly told her off. After the divorce with Tom was finalized, I made him promise not to have any further contact with me in exchange for not demanding any alimony. I heard that Tom had continued his relationship with his mistress for a while, but after being demoted and experiencing a pay cut, he was unceremoniously dumped by her. With no other option, Tom returned to the house where Betty and Rosa lived, but apparently, Betty wasn't doing any housework at all, and sometimes even brought men home, living recklessly. When he tried to kick her out, she would go into a rage, and he found himself at a loss for what to do. Rosa, in the end, couldn't pay her tuition by the deadline and had to drop out of college. Now she's working as an office clerk at a small factory, but most of her salary is taken by Betty. I moved back to my parents' home while searching for a new job. With a gap in my resume and the fact that I dropped out of college, my job search wasn't going well. But one day, a former colleague from the company I used to work for, who had started his own business, reached out and asked if I would work for him. I happily accepted the offer and am now studying hard and working to fill the gap in my skills. I've always liked studying and am a quick learner. Recognizing my efforts, I've now been given a leadership position. In my previous life, I was looked down upon, mocked, and resigned myself to the belief that I couldn't do anything. But now, I realize that was wrong and that if you put in the effort, you can open up a brighter future. There's even someone who likes my forward-looking attitude, and we've been dating steadily. I sometimes regret that I didn't teach Rosa, who was once my daughter, the value of effort before it was too late. But she is an adult now. I hope that, through her experiences in this tough world, she will eventually realize her mistakes. I'm not setting a place for you at the wedding, so this is goodbye. Right after landing at the airport, Harper, my sister-in-law, said this with a triumphant laugh. Today was Harper's wedding day in South Korea. I had come all the way to Korea with my husband and in-laws, but Harper's words were directed solely at me. What do you mean by that? I asked, shaken, to which Harper replied bluntly. Why would I invite you to the ceremony? I didn't even book a hotel for you. Why don't you sleep outside or just go back home? My name is Ava. I'm 30 years old, and I've been married to Joseph, who is the same age, for a year. We met at a social drinking event after becoming working adults, hit it off, and soon started dating. We had our share of fights during our relationship, but my love for Joseph never waned, and I happily nodded yes when he proposed. After marrying, I started living with Joseph and his parents in their house. However, as soon as we started living together, I began to be treated horribly by Joseph and my in-laws. First off, I discovered that Joseph held male chauvinistic views. I had felt demeaned by him even when we were dating, which often led to arguments, but living together, he stopped hiding his true nature. Hey, have you finished the chores? What are you lazing around for? It's a wife's job to take care of her husband and his family. Get to it. He'd often yell at me. Although he had chauvinistic views, he seemed to care about his family, treating his mother, Rachel, and his older sister, Harper, equally. The in-laws, too, looked at me coldly. Especially Rachel's bullying was severe. She's a housewife, but ever since I moved in, I've never seen her do any housework. She seemed opposed to our marriage from the start and constantly made snide remarks at me. Initially, it was just about the chores, but then she started complaining about my job too. You know, if you have time to work outside, why don't you do some housework? You should quit that hobby-like job that doesn't even bring in a decent income. Led by Rachel, the in-laws always said I should spend more time on housework than working outside. But I do my share of the chores diligently. I suspect Rachel knows this and just looks for excuses to criticize me. Really, what's so fun about being a piano teacher? It was clear from her attitude that she disliked even my job. I've been working as a piano teacher at a music school since graduating from university. The school is managed by someone else, and I'm an employee there. I've loved playing the piano since I was young and went to a music college. I once aspired to be a pianist but realized early on that I lacked the talent, so I took my current job on the recommendation of a college professor. I love the atmosphere at the piano school and have built good relationships with students and their families. I enjoy teaching piano to children and feel more relaxed at work than at home. While we were dating, Joseph admired and supported my job, but that admiration is nowhere to be seen now. Despite the constant pressure from my in-laws and Joseph to quit, I dream of opening my piano school in the future and have no plans to become a housewife. Harper, too, seems to dislike my presence, always looking at me with disdain. Why would someone like you marry Joseph? You should just divorce him. But then we'd lose someone to do the chores, which would be troublesome. That's a typical taunt from Harper. She works at a company and, using her busy schedule as an excuse, does no housework. Now that I'm living with them, she has even started dumping all her laundry and room cleaning on me. John, my father-in-law, rarely complains directly, but he seems to enjoy watching Rachel and Harper bully me. Because of this toxic environment, I don't feel like I belong in this house and am seriously considering divorcing Joseph. Then, one day, Harper's wedding was announced. I wasn't surprised to hear that Harper might be getting married soon, as I'd been hearing about it daily, but I was taken aback that her fiancé was wealthy and they planned to have the wedding abroad. The location was South Korea. So, it was decided that we, as a family, would travel to Korea. Korea, huh? I've never been there. This should be exciting. Rachel was thrilled. Joseph and John were also excited about the trip to Korea, and Harper seemed proud. However, I wasn't too keen on the idea. I had never traveled with the in-laws before, but I could already imagine how they would treat me. Still, there was one thing about this ceremony I was looking forward to. So, I tried not to think too much about the in-laws or Joseph and decided to attend the wedding with a positive attitude. On the day of departure, I was unsurprisingly made the in-laws' baggage handler. On the plane, while the in-laws and Joseph chatted happily, I was left out, feeling uncomfortable all the way to Korea. We had taken a night flight, so it was just before noon when we landed. The fresh air of a new place lifted my spirits as I stepped off the plane, but right after collecting our luggage, Harper hit me with something I never saw coming. Thanks for handling the luggage. I didn't set a place for you at the wedding, so this is goodbye. I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing at first. Harper was laughing triumphantly, and the in-laws and Joseph were looking at me with disdainful smiles. What do you mean? I managed to ask, flustered. Why would I invite someone like you to the ceremony? I didn't even book a hotel for you. Harper then said. I was so shocked that I couldn't speak. Joseph and the in-laws started laughing. As I bit my lip in frustration, Harper continued. You wouldn't fit in at a fancy hotel anyway. Sleep on the streets if you don't like it. Or just go back. She said this with a dismissive laugh, and I started to tear up, remembering all the awful treatment I'd received from them. How could such injustice be allowed? Neither the in-laws nor Joseph defended me, just laughed as if they wanted me to leave quickly. I felt utterly alone. Reaching my limit, I made a decision and told the in-laws. All right, I'll go back. Then in-laws and Joseph burst into loud laughter, echoing through the airport. Oh, good riddance. It feels refreshing without the dead weight. Rachel said. Yeah, you better go back and do some chores. John joined in. Joseph mocked. Get going! And of course, you're paying for your own return flight. After that, they took their luggage and left me at the airport. Fuming, I watched their retreating figures. Luckily, I found a flight back to America with available seats for today and quickly made the arrangements to return home. After getting back, I went to get divorce papers and spent my time tidying up and doing chores while on leave from work. I decided to relax alone while the in-laws were away. The in-laws' house, which I usually dreaded returning to, felt comfortable in their absence. A few days later, Joseph and the in-laws returned home. As soon as they opened the door, "Hey, Ava! What the hell have you done?" Joseph yelled. I, playing with my mobile phone in the living room, just shrugged secretly. Their loud footsteps approached, and Joseph, the in-laws, and Harper appeared, all furious. "Welcome back. What's wrong? Did something happen?" I put down my phone and asked innocently. Then Rachel came at me. "Don't play dumb! You took our passports back home with you. What were you thinking?" Yelling. But I just smiled. "When you told me to go back, you didn't ask for your passports. I thought you didn't need them." And said, "Actually, I had been tasked with keeping their passports safe when we were heading to Korea. I had kept them in my bag along with other valuables, and it seemed they had completely forgotten about it." "You did that on purpose, didn't you? Do you have any idea how much trouble we went through because of that?" Joseph turned red with anger and yelled at me. It was the day before returning home that he realized he didn't have his passport, and he had to rush to the embassy to get a travel document issued for his return. Then Joseph and the in-laws started talking about the terrible time they had after I returned home. This was 3 hours after they left me at the airport. Before the wedding began, Joseph and his group headed to the hotel in South Korea where they were planning to stay, only to realize at the front desk that none of them had any money. Joseph had intended to make me pay, so he didn't bring any cash, and his credit card was maxed out at that point, so they couldn't pay for the upscale hotel. They tried borrowing money from the in-laws, but they too had assumed their son or daughter would cover their travel expenses and had no cash on hand. Panicking, Harper, who had arrived at the hotel earlier, decided to rely on her fiancé and his family. Descending to the front desk, Harper deeply apologized to her fiancé and his dad. "Please, Thomas, there's been a little mix-up, and my family's in trouble. Could you lend us some money?" Thomas, Harper's fiancé, cast a puzzled look at the apologizing Harper and Joseph's group. An uneasy tension began to brew between the in-laws and Thomas's family, and before Harper could explain, Thomas spoke up. However, what Thomas said was completely unexpected. "I've been wondering, why isn't Ava here?" "Ava? Who's Ava?" Harper and the others were confused. Thomas continued, "Ava is Layla's piano teacher. She's your sister-in-law, right, Harper?" She replied she would attend the ceremony, so why isn't she here? He said. He approached Harper. Layla is Thomas's 6-year-old daughter. As it turns out, Thomas has a history of divorce and a daughter, and she is one of my piano students. Layla started attending piano lessons this year, and I'm currently teaching her twice a week. So, I already knew Thomas. Harper, Joseph, and the in-laws, learning this fact for the first time, were shocked and at a loss for words. "So it's like that. I didn't know. Well, she fell ill suddenly and couldn't come." Harper stammered an excuse, but Thomas and his dad looked at her suspiciously. At that time, Layla was waiting in the hotel room with Thomas's mom. Thomas, doubting Harper's words. "That's strange. I didn't get any message about that. I'm quite close with Ava. She would have informed me if she couldn't make it," muttered. Then Harper, starting to panic. "She must have been too sick to contact anyone. But please, Thomas, my family can't stay at the hotel without your help. Could you lend us some money?" Changed the subject. Joseph and the in-laws also desperately pleaded with Thomas. After consulting with his dad, Thomas said, "You're hiding something about Ava. Tell me the truth and I'll lend your family the money." So, Harper and Joseph reluctantly began to explain. Thomas and his dad were obviously upset upon hearing the full story, but it was too late to cancel the wedding. With 3 cash-strapped people, the only solution was for Joseph and the in-laws to use their wedding gifts to cover the travel expenses. However, even though the wedding went on, the atmosphere remained tense, and Joseph's group had a very uncomfortable time in South Korea. Why did you keep quiet about Thomas and his daughter? Harper, trembling with anger, confronted me. How could you embarrass us like this? This happened because you hid the fact that you knew Thomas and his family. Shouting in a high-pitched voice, Harper accused me. It was a surprise planned by Layla. This time, Layla was scheduled to play the piano at the reception, and I had been asked by Thomas and his family to teach her the piece she would play. That's how I first found out that Harper's fiancé was Thomas. However, if I told Harper that I knew Thomas, it might spoil the surprise. So, I kept it a secret from Harper and Joseph. Upon hearing this, Harper began to tremble and lashed out at me. Don't joke with me. What if your actions cause a divorce? I was looked down upon by his family throughout the ceremony. Then, if he mentions divorce, I'll never forgive you. This is my chance to marry into wealth. She screamed further. Did you marry Thomas for his money? I asked calmly. Emotionally charged, Harper started spilling her own schemes even though I hadn't asked. She had always desired to marry a wealthy man but never found the right match. Attending parties, she couldn't find a good match due to her high standards. So, Harper began targeting men who were rich but had a history of divorce or children. She started dating Thomas and managed to marry him. Knowing her true nature, I guessed she must have hidden it well from Thomas. If I ask for a little money, he immediately gives it to me. Where else can you find such a good man? Or should I say, a good wallet? I wouldn't have chosen a man with a history of divorce otherwise, Harper said defiantly. It was clear she loved Thomas's money, not Thomas himself. Anger boiled inside me, but I managed to ask. What about Layla? Thomas said she's very fond of you. She practiced piano hard to surprise you at the wedding. Don't you have any affection for her? Harper scoffed. Of course not. It's easier to live with them if the child likes me. But let me be clear, I never intended to become a mother to that child. Harper revealed her contempt for Thomas and his family, showing no interest in Layla. Despite Layla's effort to surprise Harper with her piano practice, Harper mocked her. I reached my limit of anger, shook off Harper's hand, and showed her my mobile phone. What? What is this? Ignoring Harper's puzzled look, I spoke into the mobile phone. Thomas, did you hear that? Your wife doesn't love you or Layla at all. Harper's face turned pale. What? You can't be serious. Actually, my mobile phone was on a call and in speaker mode. The call was with Thomas, who had been listening to the entire conversation. Wait, since when? Since you all returned home, I replied. Harper was speechless, and Joseph and the in-laws were also flustered. Thank you, Ava. That's enough. Thomas's voice came from the phone. Thomas, it's not what it seems. Harper, sweating profusely, started to make excuses. But Thomas sighed deeply and replied in disappointment. That's enough. I know you were only after my wallet and have no love for Layla. I'm disillusioned. I can't live with you anymore. And then Thomas demanded a divorce. I'll make sure to tell my parents about this incident. You don't need to come back to this house anymore. Neither you nor your parents should ever involve themselves with us again. Thomas said firmly, then thanked me and ended the call. I shrugged my shoulders and put the mobile phone in my pocket. Looking at Harper, she muttered in disbelief, "My money," and collapsed on the floor. Prioritizing money even in such a time, I was beyond words. Turning away from a dejected Harper, I glared at Joseph. I'm divorcing you too. I've already got the divorce papers, and I've signed them. I've packed my things while you were away and plan to leave immediately. I'm not going to continue being a servant for you. Reacting first to my words was Rachel. Wait a minute. Who's going to do the housework if you leave? I won't allow a divorce just because it suits you. That's right. What are you defying me for? You should just do as I say. That's what a wife is supposed to do. Rachel and then Joseph raised their voices, unleashing the frustrations I'd been holding back. I took a deep breath and shouted, "All you ever think about is yourselves. I'm telling you I won't be used by you anymore. Just share the housework or something. Being a wife doesn't mean being a slave." Seeing me raise my voice like this for the first time, Joseph and the in-laws looked shocked. They must have never dreamed that the obedient me would rebel. Ignoring the stunned in-laws, I thrust the divorce papers at Joseph and left the house that day. My divorce from Joseph was finalized around the same time as Harper's. The in-laws, who had boasted about their daughter marrying a wealthy man, were now facing scorn and discomfort from neighbors after the quick divorce. Joseph, after our divorce, hurried to find a new wife, but kept being rejected at parties due to his male chauvinism. Meanwhile, I focused on my piano teaching, gaining popularity, and finally opening my own studio. I'm living a fulfilling life teaching piano to children, currently renting a space, but hoping to buy a house and open a studio there in the future. I also keep in touch with Thomas and Layla. Thomas, disillusioned by women after this incident, has no plans to remarry, and is committed to raising Layla with his parents' help. Layla is attending my piano classes and is working hard. As for me, I'm not thinking about remarriage. I plan to cherish my relationships with those around me and live a fulfilling life.